Hey, thanks for watching here on Wayne.com. This week's edition of Inside the Zone, as always, with Blake Sebring of the News Sentinel. And Blake, a lot of road games, all road games last week. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Also want to talk about your latest book, Onto the Show. Okay. A lot of questions about that and some great stories and nuggets in there, some of which are, I'm sure, fit for print and some of which are not fit for print, which is the beauty of us talking here. But let's talk about last week. They split 4 games on the road. I know we talked about last week how they wouldn't be happy without winning at least 3 or 4. Or the mentality is to win all 4
you can hear from Gary's pregame interview with Shane yesterday. He was not happy.
Not happy. So 15 games left in the regular season. What's their takeaway from last week? Which, you know, obviously you want to win them all, but it was a challenging week on paper.
Well, it was, but
travel-wise,
I think it's the way they lost the 2 games that was the most disappointing part. Is they hadn't lost a game with a third period lead all year, and then they lose 2, both by 1 goal. I think that was what upset Gary. And then the penalty kill was just awful. And it's just been really bad. So they should be ramping up. You got 5 weeks left. It's time to pick up the pace a little bit again and really fine-tune things.
They do have some time to do that. Obviously, it was a long road trip, a grueling road trip, but they don't play again until Friday. What are some of the things that Gary is going to harp on, other than letting them get some rest and getting their legs back under them?
Actually,
before they play
I think
on
they've
Friday?
gotten plenty of rest.
Oh, you think so?
I really do. He's been giving them 2 days off a week, a lot, but they've been responding and winning, and that's why they're so good in the third period. It's part of why they're so good in the third periods. So I have a feeling they may have a hard week of practice to fine-tune, because let's face it, these are big games coming up. These are really big games coming up with Kalamazoo and Cincinnati, and they need to do well. I mean, those teams have had their number all year. They need to approach this like it's a playoff-type weekend. It's never going to be the same, but, I mean, they need some intensity, some urgency this weekend.
Speaking of this weekend, we got Championship Hall of Fame weekend. That entails quite a bit. You're going to be celebrating 9 previous championship teams, 5 people going in to the Komets Hall of Fame. What are you most looking forward to, and what are fans looking forward to? I know you talk to fans all the time.
They're looking forward to seeing people they haven't seen in a while. Luciano Aquino's coming back for the first time since 2008. Or I guess he came in 2011. Matthew Curto hasn't been back at all. Brett Smith comes down once or twice a year because his wife's from here to visit family, but I think I'm not sure he's been to a game the last 3-4 years. And the thing is I've talked to a bunch of these guys, and they're all really, really excited. I mean, some of them have said, you know, I never got to say goodbye to the jungle, you know, I mean, and I hadn't thought about it that way, but they had a chance to say goodbye to the fans and thank the fans again for all that they've done and that kind of thing. Which, you know, usually when you're a hockey player, you don't get that chance. The season's over, you're gone. Right. And if they don't bring you back, they don't bring you back, or you get traded, or you get cut, and you're gone by noon. You know, I mean, it's kind of a neat thing that these guys get to do this.
Yeah, there's not a lot of ceremony when everything is done.
They don't, you know, and hockey players, like any athlete, they don't ever get to control when their career ends. I mean, if they do, they're extremely rare. I mean, look at Colin. Colin didn't get to control when his career ended, and he played here for 10 years, you know. Colin Chin hurt his knee and then came back. But I mean, you don't have that option.
When you take a look at this week, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, what are some of the things that you're looking to see improve from the Komets? Obviously, penalty kill, but really, what's your take on these 3 games that they've got coming up?
I want to see tighten up the turnovers at the opposing blue line, which is a lot of their odd man rushes are just some forward, instead of making the easy play, tries to get cute and get fancy to beat a guy, and it's like, just make the easy play. You know, I mean, it really is simple. Simplicity wins. You know, don't try just don't try to be cute. Just make the easy play. Puck control is so much of a factor in the playoffs, more than the regular season even. And there are more teams that are trying to trap them in the neutral zone. They know the Komets are high scoring. They know they're really offensive and they're fast, and they're trying to slow them down. I want to see how they react to that, how they adjust.
All right, let's move on to your book, On to the Show. Blake Sebring, where's it available?
It's available at Amazon.com, at the bookmark on North Anthony, and it's also available at the Komets games at the souvenir stands.
So this book kind of traces all the ties that align the Komets to the NHL and different parts of the hockey world. How many? Is this 4th or 5th book about the Komets that you've written?
This will be the 4th.
So Why this book? Why tell these stories? Why now? Why?
Yeah,
why now?
It came to me over the summer. I guess it was actually last spring. I'm always trying to define what the Komets mean to Fort Wayne and how they're integrated into Fort Wayne and how they're such a critical cornerstone of Fort Wayne. And I started thinking, well, it reaches past that. It's so much bigger than just that. It's like, if you think about it, I mean, other than a business, what else reaches nationally out of Fort Wayne that people know about other than the Komets or like the Komets? And it's really a remarkable thing that they've accomplished over 66 years.
Especially in those old AM radio days, sort of like the KMOX, where everybody in the Midwest could hear, Mr. Buck at night.
Yeah.
No matter how many, no matter how many miles you were away from St. Louis.
And it's kind of come back to that too because of the internet.
Bob was kind of that way. Yeah.
Bob was exactly that way. Nobody probably introduced more fans to hockey than Bob did. And then when WoWo shrank its signal and all that changed, but now it's kind of come back that way with the internet. You can listen anywhere now. It's sort of like WoWo's back to being the 50,000 watt blowtorch again, because the parents can listen in Canada again. You can listen anywhere in the world.
Well, there are a lot of names that you could name drop that have come through the Komets, that have ties to the Komets. That still talk about
Komet
hockey.
Dropped in there.
Well, that's why it's that's why it's an entire book. But one name that any hockey fan anywhere would know, and I'll mention a few of them here. But Scotty Bowman. Just talk about his association with Fort Wayne and Komet hockey.
That was so much fun because Scotty comes in at Christmas to see his daughter and son-in-law and their two daughters, and he tries to go to a Komets game, and he usually kind of slides in and doesn't make a big deal out of it because he just wants to watch the game. And he talks about how Fort Wayne fans actually let him watch the game. They're not bugging him for autographs. They're very respectful, and he really, really appreciates that. And I tell you what, Scotty knows more about the Komets than maybe anybody but me. It's amazing. He called at 10:30 one night, and then we got it set up because Brandon Faber from from Auburn was the PR director for the Blackhawks for all those Stanley Cup years. And he goes, "You want to talk to Scotty?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah. So he has Scotty call me at like 10:30 on a Saturday night, and I'm thinking, there ain't no way Scotty's calling me. We talked till like 2 in the morning. It was unbelievable. And he'd start telling these stories, and I start laughing. He goes, "Oh, you heard that one already?" And I go, "Yeah, I have heard that one, sir." And then he'd tell another one, and I'd start chuckling. He goes, "How the heck am I supposed to have any fun if you already know all these stories?" And this guy he knows everybody. He knew that Robbie Laird had opted not to have his name put on the Stanley Cup the second time so somebody else could. I mean, he knew Chuck Adamson, he knew Lenny Thornton, he played against those guys in Canada. He knew everybody. He knew Hodgman. He knew the kid from Leato, Karch Bachman. I mean, he hadn't even made it to the NHL yet, but he knew him from a camp in Buffalo. He knows an absolute amazing amount about the Komets and about Fort Wayne hockey. He knew Mitzi Tepfer. It's unbelievable.
Encyclopedic type knowledge.
It was crazy, and he just kept. It was such a fun conversation. When he hung up at 2 o'clock, he was like, "Yeah, call anytime." I was so excited I couldn't sleep all night. I was up writing. I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's the last chapter of the book right there."
I got to get this down. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it was like I was so excited. It was unbelievable.
Mike Emmerich, obviously everybody knows, if you know anything about not just hockey, but the upper echelon of announcers in the game,
in any sport,
right now, or maybe even all time. Obviously we know his history here, but what's his connection still with the Komets? I mean, still keep an eye on him?
I don't know. And I don't know that the Komets know. I believe so. I'm sure he checks out.
He's obviously was back with Chaser to call a little bit of a game not that long ago.
And he came for Bob's funeral. And he has not been back since. But I think I have a feeling he's still checking in. And he's still looking.
Kid from the Fountain.
Yeah, I mean, this Komets are still his first favorite team, other than them and the Pirates. I'm guessing those are still the two teams that he checks in on. Those are the teams that he can be a fan of. So I'm guessing he still checks in.
Who are some of the names that if people read through this book, the average hockey fan might be surprised has a tie or ties to Fort Wayne?
Well, Kevin Weeks. I mean, he only played here for 22 games, but he's always been incredibly gracious to me. And what was fun about this book, Glenn, was all the hockey people, Torchetti, John Anderson, Bruce Boudreau, those guys, they were incredibly gracious in talking to me about all this. But it was also the people who were behind the scenes in hockey, like Brandon Faber, you know, when he got 3 Stanley Cup rings, you know, and what that was like for him. And Tommy Miracle in Tampa Bay as a Zamboni driver, and Steve Wisman talking about being on the bench for the Blues for 10 years. And it was all those people, too, that was really a lot of fun, and people don't realize that they have the ties from Fort Wayne, and they work in the NHL. Wes McCauley, I mean, oh my gosh, that was the last interview. Bob was in the hospital, and I did the interview with Wes, and Bob was there, and we were having a high time. I mean, it was so much fun, and Bob would chip in with a question, and it was one of the last great days of Bob's life, because he had so much fun with that, and we just chuckled the whole time with Wes back and forth and stuff, and these people were just so gracious. So, I mean, I didn't expect people to call me back. Bob Asenza, I haven't talked to Bob Asenza in 20 years, and he calls me back within like a day, and could not have been more willing to spend time and talk. I had Kevin Weeks for 20 minutes, and we talked for 45. You know, I mean, everybody, it was just so amazing that all these people called back, and I was like, I hope they call back. I'm not counting on it, you know. I mean,
right.
Every one of them did. It was just remarkable. The story about Mark Wells, he played, I think, 15 games here, and he was after the Olympics in 1980, and all the things that he went through with his back surgeries. I mean, he was in a full-body cast for a year, and he never lost his faith through that. And there's all kinds of stories like that. Alton White. I had no idea what Alton White's story was. I knew he was the first black Komets player. I had no idea that he experienced racism in Fort Wayne, and how the team rallied around him from that. And he can name off every guy on that team, who was on what line when, and what they meant to him. He talks about Lionel Repka, and he just talks about Lenny and Eddie and Jerry Randall, and it's just amazing. This guy played here 1 year, and he never forgot anything at all about Fort Wayne. I mean, the stories were just overwhelming to me, and I knew some of them. I didn't know all of them, but just to get to go through those again with those people and find new stories, oh my gosh, this is the most fun book I ever had a chance to write.
That brings me to the next question. Are there any other Komets projects out there in your ruminating, knocking around in the noggin of yours?
Yeah, there are. I have at least one more. And every time I say one more, I come up with another one, so we'll say 2, okay? But I want to work on some novels next and get them going. But the thing of it is, I never know exactly what the next one is, because I'll wake up in the morning and I'll be like, oh, God put this idea in my head. I got to get that done. You know, I mean, I have to get it out before I can do anything else. So you never know what the next idea is going to be.
Well, I can tell you, just as a friend and a fan, I appreciate your passion, and we are lucky to have somebody like you, in our city that can put it all down on paper, so that when some of these stories are forgotten, or people who are part of these stories have passed on, that they will live on through a book like this, and through the memories that you've been able to put down on paper.
It was so much fun. Well, thank you. I mean, I always figure if I'm excited about a story, I hope the readers are too. I think they will be too. And I can honestly say I never get bored.
And again, where can they get it?
The bookmark on North Anthony, at the Komets souvenir stand, and on Amazon.com. We're working frantically to be able to get it up on Kindle. We really want to do that before the season is over. That's our next goal.
All right.
And then after that, in November, we got an update of Bob's biography. It's like 17 more chapters, but that'll be around Thanksgiving. So that's the next big project.
A lot to look forward to. On to the show, Blake Sebring. We'll be back Monday, not talking as much literature, talking a little bit more hockey, hopefully talking a lot more wins as they get that penalty kill straightened out this weekend in 3 games.
You know what? I mean, they could be flying right now and not have anything to work on, and then they'd be bored. You know, I mean, this is all right. This is when this stuff is supposed to happen. You know, this is
better
normal.
than 15 games from now.
Oh my gosh, this is everyday normal stuff on a good team. You nitpick, you fine tune, you get them cranked up so they're peaking at the right time. You don't want them to peak right now.
Yeah. All right. Well, we appreciate it, Blake, and we'll see you here Monday on Inside the Zone next week.